Hi there, and welcome to the sixth Writing on Air session. In this session, I'm going to do two things. The first, I'm going to go through the results of Immerse or Die, which is Jefferson Smith's review blog, where he reviewed one of my first books, Shiny New Swindle. Shiny New Swindle is a science fiction book where the main heroes are hackers who want to steal lots of money from banks. It's in the future, and everyone has an implant in their brain, and the hackers are actually hacking into people's brains. So Chris, for example, hacks into people's brains, all the people around him, and draws the background over where he is, so essentially becomes invisible. And Erica, for instance, hacks into people and makes them think that whatever she's saying is true. So convinces them that no matter how ludicrous what she's saying is, it's true. It's kind of a light-hearted science fiction thing with kind of bank robbery and stuff like that. What Jefferson said was, if I see if I can share it here. Let's see. So what Jefferson said was that his problem, Immerse or Die, the concept for that is that he reads a book whilst he's either walking or running on his treadmill. And if he's taken out of the book for whatever reason, if the story isn't grabbing him, then that becomes a WTF moment. And if there's 3 WTF moments, then he drops the book and doesn't read anymore. So all 3 of his problems with my book were the same thing, which was that I was using the same story structure, the same sentence structure over and over again in the same paragraph. So, for instance, the first one he had was, he backed in and pulled his long, thin legs inside, slipping his cane into the gap between us. He shoved the duffel bag between his legs and slammed the door shut. He shook his head and sprayed me with droplets of water. Which I agree is, like, the last one there, my inclination would be shaking his head. He sprayed me with droplets of water. And then he has another 2, so it seemed like, let's see, he got to about chapter 2, I think. And he said that he was really enjoying the story, but those things were taking him out of it. So there's a number of ways to react to criticism of your work. You're always going to be a little defensive at the start. But this is where I think my day job has actually helped. So I'm a computer programmer by day, and have been doing it for nearly 20 years. And in my job, if you're precious about your code, well, then you're not a very good programmer. Like, if you say, oh, well, it can't have been my code that went wrong, well, then you look kind of stupid when it is your code that goes wrong. So you learn pretty quickly that you need to distance yourself from your own work and realize that everyone makes mistakes. So I think because of that, I find it a little bit easier than other people do to accept criticism on my work, because then my immediate reaction was, oh no, I've done something wrong in my book, not F you, Jefferson, you're wrong. This is my baby. How dare you criticize me? As well, I think it helps because I published this book a year ago, so I wrote it about 18 months ago, and that's quite a bit of distance as well from the book. So my plan going forward is that I want to go back and have a look myself and see how bad it is. So from what Jefferson flagged, his 3 were spaced in his 3 problems were spaced in about 2 chapters. So the first thing I want to do is check the book and see if it happens often, or if it's infrequent enough that I can certainly fix it, but that there wouldn't be a reason why most readers would notice it. That's the other thing. Jefferson is another science fiction author, and authors will notice things that regular readers would not. That doesn't mean, though, that you should ignore it. It, like, say, for instance, you were a cinematographer on a movie. Audience members wouldn't necessarily say, "Oh, you used too much lighting on this scene," or you had the lens open too wide, or something. But they might come out of it going, "Yeah, that movie didn't look very good." They wouldn't be able to point to any specific scene. They'd just say it didn't look very good. Whereas a cinematographer could actually say all the stuff about the lenses and the lighting and stuff. And listening to an expert in their field will tell you what specifically is going wrong. Whereas, so going back to books, another author, especially if they've written for a long time, will notice things and notice specific reasons why they're getting tripped up. So a reader might be reading and see that paragraph, and they wouldn't go, "Oh, look, the sentences are repetitive." They might just go, "I wonder what's for dinner," and just be distracted. So it's worth listening to expert reviews. You just have to consider the source. So if it's like Jefferson has published 5 different books, if it was someone who had never published anything and was a wannabe writer, I would have a very different reaction than I would have to Jefferson's commentary, because he's written a lot of stuff. And that as well goes down to my belief, which is in the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing, which, if you're not familiar, is that no matter what you want to do, it's down to how much time you spend doing it, is how good you'll get. So certain people might have a talent in a certain area. Like if you're particularly tall, you might be, if you take 2 people, one's tall and one's short, and you put them playing basketball, the taller one will tend to be better at the start. However, if the shorter player played for thousands of hours, they would run rings around the taller player if he only put in half as much time, because they've practiced more. And there's no reason to think that anything involving your brain isn't the same way. The brain is just a muscle, just like the muscles you use in playing basketball. So if someone, I've gotten criticism before from people who are not, haven't written as much, and their advice I tend to take a little less serious. Not that I don't listen to it, but what they might specifically say is wrong might be a load of hokum. So that said, I'm going to go over to Shiny New Swindle in Scrivener. If I can find it. Yeah, Google doesn't do well with this kind of thing. Let's see. So, Shiny New Swindle, here's chapter 1. So I'm just going to go through it fairly quickly and see. Here's the sentence that Jefferson noticed. Max limped to the car, leaning on his cane, opened the door and grinned. He backed in, pulling his long, thin legs inside, slipping his cane into the gap between us. He shoved the duffel bag between his legs and slammed the door shut. So there, my instinct is to go, shaking his head. He sprayed me with droplets of water. Let's see. I'm actually going to take this down a little bit and make it skinnier so it looks more like a book, just because it's easier to read for me. So all I'm doing is I'm scanning the starts of the sentences. So I'm not really reading as much as just scanning for full stops and starts of sentences. Because if I was to read every bit of it, it would take longer than I want to dedicate to this right now. So to me, 2 sentences in a row, like is here, is pretty much okay. I sent a couple of bitcoins at the taxi, and the face beamed. I clambered out into the torrential rain and jammed my hat down low. The digital face winked as the cab sped out of sight. It's, I don't know, plain. Like, I wouldn't describe that as being poetic prose, but it's not maybe such a sore thumb. Let's see. So here, for instance, is an example of how I would tend to try and write it. I nodded and turned, striding out into traffic. Cars sped by in front and behind me, and my coat fluttered in the breeze. I hoped no one else had their safety protocols bypassed. Breaking into a light jog, I reached the other side in seconds. I walked to the door of the bank and stopped. Pulling up my custom tools on my ReadyNet, I found my baby, my main hack. So that, to me at least, that's another thing to mention, is that because I published this a year ago, I've been writing like crazy. Like, I've written nearly 500,000 words since then. No, more than that. Written 750,000 words probably since then, which is kind of a lot. So this, to me, I'm not trying to make it as good as I can currently write, because that would be a folly. There's no point in trying to get what I wrote a year ago to be the same standard as what I would write now, because then I'd have to rewrite everything constantly over and over again. However, so if Jefferson, for instance, had said, this story has a major flaw, this character who appears in every scene isn't a believable character or something, I might not have gone back to it at all. It's just because he's mentioning something that's just a technical issue that potentially I can solve, and then the book is fine. So I'll keep going. So this is the next one Jefferson mentioned. Spinning, the robot slammed its metal arms into the security panel, cracking it in two. The robot kept going until only shards of glass and strings of wire remained. The robot rotated, its head cranked to the side, seeming confused. Hang on, I'm just going to check that that was the one. Okay. Well, then he left out part of the sentence, which kind of made it seem more ineloquent than it was. Let's see. Spinning, the robot slammed its metal arms to the security panel, cracking it in two. The robot kept going until only shards of glass and strings of wire remained. Then the robot rotated, its head cranked to the side, seeming confused. Other than putting in the word then there, I can't see anything really that I can fix in that one. Maybe I'm not writing it very well, but that doesn't seem... So if I change back over here to Jefferson's for a second, which I have to tell Google that I want it. So the way Jefferson had it, the robot slammed its metal arms into the security panel, cracking it in two. The robot kept going until only shards of glass and strings of wire remained. The robot rotated, its head cranked to the side, seeming confused. There, you can see that it's just the robot, the robot, the robot. However, when I go to the actual text, spinning, the robot slammed his metal arms, cracking into two. I could change that to an it, at least. It kept going until only shards of glass and strings of wire remained. Then the robot rotated, its head cranked to the side, seeming confused. Yeah. I mean, I think that's really as good as I can get with that paragraph, because if you leave out the spinning, there's a lot of the robots. If you put in the spinning, the sentences aren't starting with the robot. It's a slight variation. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm being silly. But I don't think it's that bad. But I think it's apparent what is the it in this, in that it's the robot. But I would then clarify that the robot is rotating and not just put it rotating after all of this confusion stuff. Anyway, we'll keep going. So that's what just me scanning I've noticed so far. Maybe I've missed something, but just scanning for the starts of sentences and seeing repetitive structure. Blah, blah, blah. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2. That one there is only 2 sentences, but it stood out to me at least. I dodged between them, flattening against the wall as a larger man passed. I opened my messenger program as I reached the 3rd floor. So I could say 3rd floor. I opened my messaging program. I dodged between them, flattening against the wall as a larger man passed. Reaching the 3rd floor, I opened my messaging program. That seems better to me. That wasn't flagged by Jefferson, that's just one I saw myself. Okay. I'm just going to see Jefferson's was before this. I saved the account to the quick list. I saved the account. Inside, the balance displayed a paltry 1,000 kroner. I saved the account to the quick list and pulled up the source code. I would have to hurry or they would find our change. I found account calculations and typed in my prepared changes, flipping back to Erica's balance. 10 kroner for her account to a registered charity. Erica's balance expanded, zeros filling the screen until it stopped at 1 billion kroner. Inside, the balance displayed a paltry 1,000 kroner. I saved the account to a quick list and pulled up my source code. I would have to hurry or they would find our change. See, If I change this to finding, then I've got flipping. So frankly, I don't think that paragraph needs to change. Or at least if it did change, it would have to change quite dramatically. Anyway, that's the end of chapter 2, which is as far as Jefferson got. So just looking over it, I've changed 2 things, 3 things really. One which I definitely agreed with, which was about Max getting into the taxi. Max limping to the taxi and shaking his head. He sprayed me with droplets of water. That's fine. I agreed with that. That was a very good paragraph. Especially, it's the second paragraph in the book. Should be a bit more eloquent. The other one that I found that Jefferson didn't, and then the second one that he found, I changed one of the robots to be it, and then I put in a then. So apart from that, I'm surprised because I was expecting to agree more with Jefferson before I started, but I don't know, it might be a style issue, or it might just be that I'm a noob. But those didn't seem too bad to me. The other thing I wanted to do whilst I'm at it was go over to The Bite of Death, which is the last thing I published, and see if I had similar issues. So I'm just going to do that now just for a couple of chapters as well. So The Bite of Death is in my fantasy series. It's the 3rd book. It's about an assassin who's sent to kill one of the main characters from the previous books. I'm going to make this small again so I can read it easier. Okay, this first one that jumped out to me. Lila watched each of them approach. She played their attacks forward in time, calculating where they would strike. Whirling, she moved between them, her swords whipping through the air around her. She ended facing the castle gates. From behind her, she heard 4 bodies hit the ground and gurgle the last. Shaking the blood from her blades, she sheathed them and pushed the gates open. Yeah, I don't know, there's a bit of variety there. As I said, maybe I'm being a caveman and not being eloquent enough, but blah blah blah. Okay, that's nothing jumped out at me at least. It's a very short chapter. It's almost a prologue, but yeah, I didn't want it to be a prologue. Lila becomes a major, like she's a point of view character, so it's not really a prologue. Prologues tend to be about other stuff. Blah blah. That's also jumped out at me at least. Tombert listened to her go, stepping on every twig and crunching every leaf on our way down the path. He stared at the half-finished painting in front of him. Pushing his brush into a different blob of paint, he raised it and drew a large black streak down the center of the painting. Scooping more paint onto his brush, he continued until he covered the entire canvas in black. I don't know. Seems okay to me at least. But the next one may be problematic. He felt a dim spark of anger down inside him. He wondered why he didn't feel more. He thought that it should be an inferno of hurt raging inside his chest. Instead, he just felt cold and disgusted with himself. Caitlin had been so good to him, and he hadn't shaken off his childish feelings for Isabel. I don't know. It seems borderline, but okay to me. nothing else that I can see there. Okay. So, certainly there were problems in Shiny New Swindle, but the first 2 chapters of Bite of Death look okay. That's, I don't know. There's 2 things. The first is that Jefferson was quite right about some of the paragraph structure in Shiny New Swindle. Certainly, I haven't comprehensively edited it now. The reason why I've just done 2 chapters, and the reason why I've broken off from Greenstar, is because, for me personally, if I get something like that where I know something might be wrong, that'll drive me crazy. So if someone said, for instance, that there was a typo on page 200 in The Bite on the End of the Line, I'd have to go and fix it right away and republish to all the different stores and everything, even though that's a, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hour job. Despite whatever might be on the schedule for that day, unless what's on the schedule is desperately behind schedule, and then I turn to that. So, in order to reassure myself that it's not as big an issue as it appeared to be from Jefferson's review, I wanted to check it. Now, there was some comments on Jefferson's post that these immerse or dies weren't useful, they were just one person's opinion. However, if this flags something for me that then makes me a better writer going forward, that I check my paragraph structure in my edit, then I don't see how that's not useful, at least to me. I mean, maybe as a reader review kind of thing, it might not be that useful because your taste might be different. As I say, readers might not even notice the fact that there was 2/3 paragraphs there that were a little less than poetic. But that was out of 6,000 words, so it's not an issue that would crop up a lot, I would think, I would hope, for most readers. So, as I say, that was mostly to reassure myself, that half an hour session, that I could then go on with Greenstar and not worry about Shiny New Swindle, because it's not that bad. If someone bought a copy of that book right now on Amazon, I would not feel bad that they had bought that book. It's not like every page has constant crappy paragraphs that look like, you know, someone doesn't know how to write. It's more, every chapter might have one set of 2 to 3 sentences that start with the same pronoun. That's not good, but it's not a disaster. Also, opening The Bite of Death and checking that was just to reassure myself that what I had hoped, which is that my writing has gotten better since last year, and that I'm not making the same mistakes again. So if I spotted, say, 3 or 4 things that stopped me up in the first 2 chapters of Shiny New Swindle, and spotted one that was borderline but nothing too bad as far as I can see, then I'm hoping that that's you know, the world's worst statistical check, but that's an indication that the later stuff I've written isn't that bad. So that being done, I am now going to go to my spreadsheets. Oh, there's a bunch of people. Zao Fidele says that he's going to watch. Hey, Zao. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure I'm not. Let's see. Friend request I'll just deal with. Yes. Let's see. So, to open both my spreadsheets. I've actually been surprised. I was expecting that these videos would basically be just for myself, that there wouldn't be that many people watching, but there seems to be about a dozen or so people watching every video, more or less. Some people watch, some of them more and some of them less. Some people go to the. If you haven't seen, I do a summary, condensed version of the videos with just my talky bits, because just watching me write might be a bit boring for some people. But there's kind of a split. It's about 12 people watching each, which, as I say, is more than I was expecting. I will put it under shiny iron curtain, that's fine. So I'm hoping people are getting something out of it. Like, I would say that, for instance, I'm very motivated by watching Garrett Robinson amongst other people. So Sean Platt and Johnny B. True and David Wright do the self-publishing podcast, and they've been writing for a number of years now. Especially, so where their podcast was when I started listening, which was a year and a half ago maybe, Johnny was starting out as a writer. He had one book called The Bialy Pimps, which had taken him 10 years to write, and what he was saying to Sean and Dave was that they were superhuman, that they were managing to write that much stuff, hundreds of thousands of words every year. And over the 18 months since then, Johnny has gone from publishing his Fat Vampire series of novellas to publishing millions of words. So that's kind of taken Johnny and Sean and Dave out of the realms of my immediate future, I would say. So, like, I could certainly see myself being where they are at some time in the future. Like, they're working full-time, they're working really hard, publishing a lot of stuff, and they're setting up all these different umbrella companies and publishing companies and hitting the #1 on Amazon lists and stuff like that. That's not where I am right now, and it's not where I'm going to be in the immediate future. I mean, I'd love to hit that eventually, but it's not where I am right now. Whereas Garrett is, like, I would say, just ahead of where I am. So his books sell better than mine, and he writes a lot more than I do, and he's way better at marketing. Like, he does Vlog a Novel, which Writing on Air is based on, because I'm just stalking him and copying everything he does. So his storytelling podcast with him and Zach Bulger ZC Bulger and Chrissy Moss is kind of a podcast or a show from the point of view of authors who are a little bit ahead of me or about the same place as me. Like, I would say that I'm roughly equivalent to the position Chrissy's at, where she's writing her first novel, but she's got a lot of short stories out. So she has more stuff on Amazon, and yeah, so like she's kind of stepping up her game at the same time, as I'm trying to step up my game. Whereas Garrett and Zach are both full-time, and they have some books out, but they don't have, a multi-company empire thing. So I don't even remember where I was going with this, but yeah, so basically I'm hoping, I think this is where it was going. I've even forgotten my point. But I'm hoping that this Writing on Air, where I am, is currently being useful for people who are one step behind me, maybe. So Garrett and Zach and Chrissy are around where I am or ahead of me, Sean and Johnny and Dave are way ahead of me, so I watch self-publishing podcasts, but it's I find becoming less relevant than it was for me before. Like they've kind of hit the gas pedal last year and kind of left me way back in the dust. So it's certainly useful, but it's not as useful, I think, as storytelling podcast and following those guys. Um, so hopefully, yeah, that writing on air is useful to people who are watching it because I'm a step ahead, and then oh, this is where I was going. People watching the full videos, watching me write, that then you can see that I'm just sitting there and writing. And another thing to mention is that if I wasn't writing on air, I wouldn't be writing as much because I'd be distracted by Facebook and Twitter and stuff. Like I'd go off and watch some video or something right now after doing this editing thing, whereas instead I'm going to go and write. Um, which means that Greenstar was taking me a week for an episode, and it took me a couple of days for episode 9, and I'm nearly finished episode 10 after 3 days. So that's pretty fast. So yeah, it's about outlining, and it's about sitting there and actually doing the work and not getting distracted by what's on Google Plus and stuff. Anyway, that's enough blathering for right now. I'm going to go and write because otherwise I'd just be using talking to you guys as distraction from writing. And I will check back in half an hour. Okay, I overran my time a little there by a few minutes. Wrote 1,312 words in that session, which I'm going to add to the spreadsheet. 1,312. And one. So yeah, they stopped the calamari from invading the solar system, but there's a twist, which I'm going to write in the next session. The one thing I added just there was, oh yeah, there's two things actually to talk about. The first thing was that I paused quite early on in that session because I had to go and find out what name Josie's ex-husband was, what he was called. So I might just share that document with you. So normally I'd have all this stuff in the document itself if it's a novel, but because Greenstar is a series, we actually have a specific Scrivener file that's got all the stuff about all the characters and stuff like that. And then there's a bunch of images and stuff. This is my amateurish drawing of a calamari, which are the main bad guys. It's just to make it easier as like a frame of reference thing of what things look like. I also have loads of stuff, like pictures of people that fit the character types. A lot of Johnny, Sean, Dave, and Garrett and other people use actors to kind of cast their books, whereas I use pictures of real people that I just grab off Google Images, because I want I want from the picture is what the person looks like, and maybe some hint of their personality from their expression or whatever, but not anything that would kind of impose itself on the story. So the characters become their own people. Whereas if I said Josie was Sandra Bullock, for example, which doesn't really fit, but anyway, then I would be thinking of Sandra Bullock's usual personality in a movie, and that would kind of influence things, and that's not what I want, at least for my for these books. So yeah, so I just pick a picture of a middle-aged woman from Google Images, which I won't show because I have no rights to show the image, but you know, Google middle-aged woman, you'll get the picture. Now I'm going to go straight into a new session because I want to get this finished. I'm hungry and I want to finish this book before I have dinner, because then I know I can spend the rest of the evening watching telly or something. So I'm going to go straight into that, and I'll check back in half an hour. Okay, so I overran again, but then I was getting to the end of it, so I just wanted to finish. So that was kind of overrunning by 6 minutes or so, just on purpose, because I'd rather do 6 more minutes than start another session that's only going to be 6 minutes long. Whilst I was writing there, I was opening a bunch of documents, so I was a bit all over the place. Because at the end there, if you were watching, I put in references to every single place the Greenstar's been in the season. Well, pretty much every place. So that took my total down a bit. So 1,025 words. 1,025. Adding it to the spreadsheets as usual. Google Docs is good for having your stuff everywhere, but it's not good at handling massive amounts of data. Well, massive amounts, 800 rows or whatever. So that's it for Greenstar. Hey. Obviously, there's way more stuff to do. But that's it for the first draft. First draft is now finished of the whole of Season 1. So let's see. I'm just going to tidy up a little here before I hand it over to Dave. So next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to drop Greenstar for now and go over to Hard Vacuum 2. So I've been trying to work on 2 projects at once for a while, and I found out that basically that doesn't work for me. That I can work on outlines for different projects at the same time. Actually, that works better because an outline you want to kind of give it time and breathing room to go before you go back to it. But when I'm actually writing a first draft, it doesn't work to try and write 2 different first drafts at the same time. So where an outline you're kind of getting space to come up with new ideas, but the first draft, that space you're getting is time where you're forgetting what you've done in the rest of the first draft, because first drafts take a long time, there's a lot in them, and you don't want to be forgetting stuff. So a little, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, I dropped Hard Vacuum 2, and instead of doing 1 week with Hard Vacuum, 1 week with Greenstar, I did just Greenstar for the last little while to finish that off, because then everything is fresh for Greenstar, and then Hard Vacuum 2 I can take up now and write start to finish the script draft. So that's what I'm going to do next. I may take the Shiny New Swindle edit before that, since that's not a major job. But for today I'm done, because I'm pretty much burnt myself out a bit in the last few days. I don't know if you can see, I've got like big rings under my eyes, because usually I would write about 3,000 words a day, and I've been writing between 5,000 and 8,000 words a day, and that's quite a lot for me, because I'm working a 8-hour a day job, and also taking care of things in the house, and then whatever free time I have, including some sleep time, was going to writing. So I'm going to probably take a break tomorrow. I may do a vlog, since vlogging is actually quite useful. It's a nice break from writing. It's something creative that I can do that doesn't require, it's not the same skill set as writing, so it's a nice break. But I would reckon that I probably won't do any writing tomorrow. So yeah, anyone that's watching, you just got to see the end of Greenstar Season 1. Before I leave, I'm going to check in case anyone's asking questions or anything. I did enable the questions and answers thing, but people are kind of quiet. I haven't even gotten many comments. Let's see. Three people watching. Shahul Ahmed, Patrick Hernandez, and Zeo Fidele are watching or are going to watch later. So hey guys. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop there and go make my dinner. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.